She was the girl with the golden voice, and she lit up radio and TV screens long before streaming was even a thing. Petula Clark was a star all over the world because she was so charming, and her songs like Downtown are still popular today. But her life has been an interesting blend of family, love, and strength behind the music. Now that she's 92, a lot of people are curious about how she spends her time. Is she still working? How has her health been doing all these years? What does her life look like now? Come with us as we explore more closely at her story and find out how she is now. But first, let's start at the beginning. The early years of Petula Clark. Sally Clark was born on November 15, 1932, in Yule, Surrey, England. She later changed her name to Petula Clark. Doris and Leslie, her parents, were both nurses at Longgrove Hospital in Epsom. Her father was English and her mother was Welsh. There was a humorous story behind Petula's odd first name. Her father made it up by putting together the names of two of his ex-girlfriends, Pet and Ola, as a joke. That funny quip gave her one of the most well-known names in music. Clark was up in Aberystwyth, a village near Merthyr Tydfil in Wales, where her grandfather worked as a coal miner. In 1939, she sang at the Collier's Arms in Aberystwyth for the first time. Later, she remembers living just outside of London during the Blitz. She talked about seeing fighting in the skies and escaping with her sister to air raid shelters as the alarms went off. She first got in touch with the BBC when she was just 8 years old. Kids were asked to send messages to family members who were in the military. The Criterion Theatre, which was underground and protected during air raids, was where the recordings were made. Some kids got upset when the sirens went off. Someone called out to see if anyone could sing to calm the room down. Petula bravely got up and performed "Mighty Like a Rose." They recorded her since they liked her voice so much. That little moment set off a journey that would change her life forever. Petula adored singing in the church choir when she was a kid, and she was quite good at imitating other people. She would often make her family and friends laugh by copying idols like Vera Lynn, Carmen Miranda, and Sophie Tucker. Her father supported her love of acting. He took her to watch Flora Robson in a theater version of Mary Stuart in 1944. Petula subsequently remembered that night and said, "I made up my mind right then and there that I was going to be an actress. More than everything else in the world, I wanted to be Ingrid Bergman." However, she didn't start out as an actress, she started out as a singer. She sang with an orchestra at Bentl's department store in Kingston upon Thames in 1945. She got a tin of toffee as a reward for her efforts. And a watch made of gold. That was the start of a career that would never stop growing. The first big step. When Petula was only 9 years old, she took her first big step into show business. In October 1942, she was listening to a BBC radio show with her dad. She wanted to send a message to her uncle, who was serving overseas. An air raid caused the program to be late. The producer asked if anyone could perform to calm the crowd down. Once more, Petula got up and sang "Mighty Like a Rose." The answer was too much. The crowd loved her and urged her to sing the song again for the people who were listening on the radio. That one moment grew into hundreds of shows. During the war, she appeared in about 500 shows that were meant to cheer up British soldiers. People instantly started calling her the singing sweetheart. She also went on tour with Julie Andrews, another child star, all over the UK. She was so well known that she sang for King George VI, Winston Churchill, and General Bernard Montgomery. Some soldiers even put her pictures on their tanks for good luck. People called her the Shirley Temple of Britain. As her fame grew, fresh opportunities came her way. Film director Maurice Elvey saw her play at the Royal Albert Hall in London in 1944. He gave her the part of a 12-year-old orphan in his military drama Medal for the General. After that, she was in several movies, such as Strawberry Roan, I Know Where I'm Going, London Town, and Here Come the Huggets. She also worked with Alec Guinness in The Card and Anthony Newley in Vice Versa, which was directed by Peter Ustinov. She was good at more than simply movies and plays. In 1945, she was included in the comic book Radio Fun, where she was called radio's Merry Mimic. Petula, on the other hand, thought she had played child roles for too long and wanted to do more serious work. That drive took her to TV. She was on a BBC variety show called Cabaret Cartoons in 1946. She did so well in the show that she was given her own series. She was presenting Pet's Parlor by 1950, which made her even more famous. She also met Joe, Mr. Piano Henderson, about this period. For approximately 10 years, he was both her musical partner and her romantic partner. Henderson introduced her to record producer Alan A. Freeman in 1949. He and Petula's father started Polygon Records. This was the first time Petula could record music. Put Your Shoes on Lucy was her debut release. She also sang duets with Benny Lee for Decca, which helped her find her voice. In the 1950s, Petula's career truly took off. In the UK, she had a lot of hits. In 1954, The Little Shoemaker came out, and in 1955, Mallorca came out. Then, in 1955, there was Suddenly a Valley, and in 1956, With All My Heart, The Little Shoemaker became an international smash and even reached #1 in Australia. This was only the start of her success around the world. In 1955, Polygon Records, the label her family had put money into, was sold to Nixa Records, which was part of Pi Records. This meant that Petula was now legally signed to Pi, the label she stayed with until the early 1970s. She also wanted to help emerging talent get started. She told Joe Henderson to make his own music, and between 1955 and 1960, he had 5 singles of his own on the charts. But Petula wasn't slowing down. She was looking past the UK and soon set her sights on Europe. She was asked to play at the Paris Olympia in 1957. One of the most well-known places in France. She was anxious about going there, especially because she had a nasty cold. But the show went well, and the crowd liked her. The next day, she was asked to go to Vogue Records, where she met her future husband, Claude Wolff. She was drawn to him right away. She accepted to sign because she was informed she would be working with him. That choice changed not only her job but also her personal life. Becoming famous throughout Europe. Petula was touring France and Belgium with singer Sacha Distel by 1960. They stayed close friends for the rest of their lives. She started making records in French, German, Italian, and Spanish, which helped her reach more people across Europe. She was still having hits in the UK while she was building her career in France. In 1961, her song Sailor reached #1 in Britain, and that same year, Romeo and My Friend the Sea also made it into the top 10. Romeo sold more than 1 million copies, which earning her a gold disc from the Recording Industry Association of America. She recorded Yaha Twist, a French rendition of Lee Dorsey's song Yaya, in France. It was the only twist song by a woman to do really well. Chariot, which many people eventually known as I Will Follow Him, was another tremendous success. Petula's songs were also recorded in German and Italian, and they were very popular. She even sang songs by Serge Gainsbourg, which sold very well. Petula also got a gift that few artists ever get during this time. He gave her one of his own songs, Un Enfant. She sang it on their tour together, and a live version of the song went on to become a hit in Canada. She could do more than just sing. She wrote the music for the French crime movie A Couteau Tires in 1963 and had a small part as herself. She went on to write music for several movies, such as Entre ciel et mer in 1963, Rêves d'enfant in 1964, La Bande Babel in 1966, and even Pétain in 1989. Some of these themes were put out on a CD called In Her Own Right several years later. She was a real international star because she had such a wide range of jobs. On the popular show This Is Your Life, she was recognized 3 times, in 1964, 1975, and 1996. Something that very few performers have ever done. She began her trip in Britain during World War II, but by the 1960s, she was one of Europe's most popular artists. And this was just the start of the long and famous career she would have for decades. The breakthrough in downtown. Petula Clark's career in Britain had started to slow down by 1964. She was still making music, but it wasn't as good as it used to be. When Tony Hatch, a composer and arranger, came to see her in Paris, everything changed. He brought a few songs with him, but none of them interested her. Then, out of desperation, he played a few chords of a song he had started writing while he was in New York City. The track was appealing, and Petula informed him right away that she wanted it to be her next single if the words fit the tune. That tune became Into Downtown. Neither of them thought it would go this big. In late 1964, Downtown came out in many languages and took the world by storm. It was a smash in the UK, France, the Netherlands, Germany, Australia, Italy, Japan, India, and even Rhodesia. Joe Smith, an executive at Warner Brothers, heard it in London and instantly secured the rights for the US. The risk paid off. In January 1965, Downtown was #1 in the US, selling more than 3 million copies there alone. The song also won Petula her first Grammy for Best Rock and Roll Recording. More importantly, it gave her a new name. Not just a vocalist in Europe, but a world-famous star. This triumph was just the beginning. After Downtown, she had a string of successes that made her one of the most famous singers of the 1960s. Fame, hits, and controversy. After the triumph of Downtown, Petula had hit after hit in the US. Songs like Know a Place, My Love, A Sign of the Times, I Couldn't Live Without Your Love, Don't Sleep in the Subway, and This Is My Song saturated the airwaves. My Love brought her a second #1 record in the US. Everyone knew who she was now. She earned a Grammy for I Know a Place, and decades later, Downtown was added to the Grammy Hall of Fame. With the recordings came fame on TV. Petula was a regular on American variety shows hosted by Ed Sullivan and Dean Martin. She was on Hullabaloo, Shindig, and the Hollywood Palace. She was asked to be on musical specials and even hosted her own. But one of those shows put her in the middle of a cultural tempest. NBC requested her to host a program on TV in 1968. Harry Belafonte was one of her visitors. They all performed her anti-war hymn, On the Path of Glory. Petula touched Belafonte's arm throughout the show. A sponsor for the show freaked out because they were afraid that people in the South would be upset about a white woman touching a black man on TV. He said that the scene needed to be changed to make it safer. But Petula and her husband, Claude Wolfe, who was in charge of making the show, said no. They threw out all the other takes and sent the final cut with the moment still in it. The sponsor lost his job, and the show broadcast just 4 days after Martin Luther King Jr. was slain. The ratings were sky high, and critics loved it. It was a brave stand on live TV that people still talk about. And for Petula, it proved that she was not simply a singer, but also a woman who was not scared to stand up for what she believed in. On the screen and on stage. Petula wasn't simply at the top of the charts in the late 1960s. She was also becoming into theater and movies. In 1968, she starred with Fred Astaire in Finian's Rainbow, which got her a Golden Globe nomination. The next year, she was in another musical called Goodbye, Mr. Chips, this time with Peter O'Toole. It made her quite famous. She also maintained traveling the US, playing at famous supper clubs like the Copacabana in New York and the Coconut Grove in Los Angeles. People also knew her for helping young people with their talent. She brought French composer Michel Colombier to America in 1968 and introduced him to Herb Alpert. Colombier later became well known for working with musicians like Prince. Richard Carpenter also thanked Petula for introducing him and his sister Karen to Alpert. It helped the Carpenter get his profession off the ground. Petula had friends with a lot of famous people, like Elvis Presley. Later, she chuckled at how Elvis flirted with her and Karen Carpenter backstage. She said, "He didn't have us exactly, but he had a darn good try." That's enough talking about that for now. She was also there for important events in history. In 1969, while she was performing in Montreal, she had trouble with hecklers who didn't like how she switched between English and French. She asked John Lennon for help and ended up joining him and Yoko Ono in their legendary bed in protest. That's how Petula's voice became one of the background vocalists on Lennon's song Give Peace a Chance. Her concert and night with Petula on November 15, 1969, were the first color broadcasts on BBC One. It was yet another first in her vast list of accomplishments, showing that her career was full with historic moments. Reinvention and living a long time. In the 1970s, there was more music, but her interests began to change. She put out tunes including Melody Man, The Song of My Life, and Loving Arms. But she also cut back so she could spend more time with her family. She was on TV a lot and even guest starred on The Muppet Show. She made a dramatic comeback to the theater in 1981, playing Maria von Trapp in The Sound of Music in London. Maria herself said that Petula was the best Maria ever. The show set records, and Petula added more dates to accommodate demand. She even got a nomination for Best Actress in a Musical at the Laurence Olivier Awards. In 1983, she captivated people at the Royal Albert Hall with a touching rendition of For All We Know in memory of her friend Karen Carpenter, who had died just 2 days before. Later, Petula starred in Candida and created the music for Someone Like You. In 1993, she was in Blood Brothers on Broadway and played the famous part of Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard more than 2,500 times. She kept making music, and one of her best songs was the disco version Downtown 88, which brought her back to the UK top 10. Queen Elizabeth II awarded her a Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 1998 to honor her work. She wouldn't slow down even after she became older. She went on tour around the world, made new records, and made films. She played at the Montreux Jazz Festival, hosted a PBS special, and even went back to the West End stage in 2019 to play the Birdwoman in Mary Poppins. She sang I'm Still Here on BBC's Old Friends concert in 2023. But what about her life outside of work? Things of the heart. Petula Clark and Joe Mr. Piano Henderson were romantically associated around 1955. There was a lot of talk about the relationship, with a lot of people thinking they would get married. They worked together a lot, and fans started to think of them as a couple in both music and real life. But their relationship was starting to suffer because of their celebrity. Petula's career in France was just getting started, and Henderson didn't want to be recognized as Mr. Petula Clark. Eventually, he made the choice to leave. Even after the romance was over, the two maintained friends and worked together again. The BBC radio show Pet and Mr. Piano was their last effort together. It was a symbolic way for them to say goodbye to their working relationship. Years later, Henderson penned a song called There's Nothing More to Say about their breakup. Petula put it on her LP, which means the chapter is over. Life quickly brought her into contact with new friends in the entertainment business. She was a witness at her close friend Charles Aznavour's wedding in Las Vegas in 1967. With Sammy Davis Jr. just 10 years earlier, in October 1957, her career took a big turn in the Paris Olympia. She sang on Musicorama, a live radio show, and not long after that, she was asked to join Vogue Records. There, she met Claude Wolff, a young publicist. She liked him right away, and when she learned that Wolff would work with her if she agreed to record in French, she said yes. Their business relationship quickly turned into a romantic one. Petula and Claude got married in June 1961. They went on to have 2 girls and a boy. Later, they had 2 grandkids. Petula's family life was important to her, but it was also hard. Later, she said that her hectic schedule kept her away from her kids while they were younger, and she wishes she could have been closer to them. In 2013, she said publicly that her relationship with Wolff was no longer romantic. But their past was still strong and lasting. Wolff died on March 20, 2024, which was a sad end to an essential part of her life. Home, beliefs, and choices. Petula Clark's personal life also showed how she felt about politics and belonging. Petula wrote Margaret Thatcher a message of congratulations in 1979, when she became the first woman to be Prime Minister of Britain. She wrote, "Congratulations. I'm so happy for you and for Britain." She even sang at a rally for young conservatives that same year. But her opinions were never limited to one side. She went to a fundraiser for Tony Blair, the Labour Prime Minister, in 2002, which showed that her support could bridge party boundaries. No matter what happened, she always felt like she belonged outside of politics and in her private life. Petula has lived in Geneva, Switzerland, since the 1960s. The quiet environment helped her stay grounded when she traveled the world to perform. She also had time with her family in Geneva, where she lived with her husband's kids and eventually her grandkids. She also had a property in London's Chelsea and a lodge in the French Alps where she loved to ski. These houses showed how she lived, with ties to Europe and the rest of the globe. Her family and residences gave her stability as her work changed, but her health would soon bring its own problems and dramatic events. Staying healthy and strong. Petula Clark lived a full and healthy life, but she did have some medical scares. She told the Daily Mail about the biggest health problem she had as a young woman. She had to have an emergency appendectomy when she was 21. The procedure was supposed to fix the condition, but it made the discomfort worse. Petula remembered that she had her appendix removed as an emergency operation when she was 21. Afterward, I was in a lot of agony, and it became worse. They had to cut me open again 6 months later and found that I had developed internal adhesions around the scar tissue, which had become gangrenous. During the emergency surgery, they took out part of her bowel. The encounter was scary for her parents. She thought, "My parents were beside themselves, but I've never had any problems there since. There is only a small, faded scar." The incident could have caused her to have health problems for the rest of her life, but she got better. Since then, she has stayed very healthy. She was still saying she was active and robust at the age of 89. Living in Geneva helped her stay in shape. She said that she regularly ran upstairs and liked being active in her mountain cabin. She chuckled and said she didn't have any problems with her bad knees. She said that she didn't take a lot of pills or vitamins and that the only diet she had ever been on was the Atkins diet, which she tried to reduce weight after having a baby. Petula Clark came out stronger after facing danger at 21. The scar that changed her life was a reminder of the danger, yet after that, she was full of vitality and strength. Her journey highlighted not just her talent, but also her will to keep going, whether it was in her work or her health. The tune that made everything different. The song Downtown by Petula Clark reached #1 on the US charts in January 1965. The song was about getting away from your daily problems by going into the city and enjoying the lights and noise. It won her a Grammy for Best Rock and Roll Recording and was used in TV shows like Seinfeld and Lost and movies like Girl Interrupted. But the story of how it all started was easy. At the time, Petula was living in Paris with her French husband. She was already well known in Europe for singing in French, Italian, and German. Then a young producer named Tony Hatch from Pi Records in London came to visit her. He urged her to make recordings in English as well. She wasn't sure at first. She said, "I'm fine the way I am, but we need to find the right song." Hatch sat down at the piano and proceeded to play a song he had just begun to write. Petula remembered that when I walked back into the room with the tea, I commented, "That's a great song. Can you write a lyric that is as good as the music?" He answered, "I'll give it a damn good try." I said, "Okay, I'll do it." They recorded in downtown London 2 weeks later. They both thought the song would be a hit, but not like this. Brought into the spotlight. The discharge of Downtown was like a storm. It immediately became popular not just in the US, but also in Canada, Australia, and around the world. Petula talked about how unprepared they were for its popularity. "We had no idea we had recorded a monster. All of a sudden, it was a hit everywhere. The moment was just right." The Beatles had already made it easier for British performers to get work in the US, and Petula was swept up in what became known as the British invasion. Soon, Ed Sullivan and other shows were begging her to come on. New York was the first place in America where she sang Downtown. She had just gotten back from Paris and was really tired from the flight. There was no practice. She strolled right onto the stage in front of a live audience and orchestra. The orchestra started playing the song too fast, which made it even more nerve-wracking, but the crowd didn't mind. Petula remembers that when she stepped on stage, everyone got up and cheered. That was the start of her love affair with American viewers, but success also brought problems. She already had a lot of work in Europe and contracts there. Now America wanted not only New York, but also Las Vegas and Los Angeles. She also had 2 kids at home who were still little. She said, "It made my life a lot more complicated, but in a really great way." She thought that traveling was a terrific way for her kids to learn, even though it was stressful. They grew up with recollections of a life full of things that most kids never do. The stories behind the song. As time went on, Downtown became more than just a hit song. People started to live with it. Petula said that listeners often told her personal anecdotes about what the song meant to them. A few troops who fought in Vietnam informed her that her song gave them strength to keep going. She said that you never know how much a song would move people when you initially record it. Everyone who listens to it gets something different out of it. For some, it was a song that helped them forget their problems. For some, it became linked to vital memories. That strength is what kept the song going for years. Petula said she never thought things would go this far. She was only thinking about doing her job well and singing well at the time. But as time went on, she learned that music could provide hope and solace to those outside of the recording studio. And since she had already made a name for herself in multiple languages, her music spread even more. She said, "I'm English, but I fell in love with a Frenchman. That's why I moved to France. I got famous in France, which meant I had to sing in French. Then the Italians wanted me to sing in German and then in Italian. It simply kind of spread over time. And I really like to sing in Italian. Let's be honest, it's the language of opera." She was special because she could sing in various languages, which allowed her reach people all over the world. Still singing today. Petula Clark kept performing even as she became older. Even in her 80s, she was still touring the US, traveling, and even sleeping on a tour bus. When asked why she continued going, she said, "I just love doing it. That's the real cause. I can't picture my life without it." For her, acting wasn't just a job. It was happiness, connection, and perhaps something divine. She said that there is nothing like the connection between what is happening on stage and what is happening in the audience. There is a type of communion that happens. And it's almost like a religious experience. She was constantly planning her next big event, even at 92. She joked that there will be a concert in London with a full orchestra and a live crowd. It was still exciting for her. Petula Clark was showing that the joy of music and performing never goes away, even 60 years after Downtown altered her life. Her voice, melodies, and tale had been passed down from generation to generation. People originally knew her for one song, but her love of singing kept her on stage for decades, and it doesn't look like she's going to stop anytime soon. What song by Petula Clark do you like best? Is it one of her other masterpieces or Downtown? Leave your opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep an eye out for more amazing stories from Hollywood's interesting past. See you again soon.